A lot of people ruin their greens in watercolor, and it has nothing to do with color mixing. Let me show you how and what actually fixes it. Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel where I post watercolor tutorials every week and do a lot by demand. So this is one that was requested, painting tropical leaves, and today I picked a banana leaf cluster. And I'm starting with the base. I kind of approach each one of these leaves a little bit differently just to show you some different techniques that you can use for it. But we are going to start with the very first layer on this top left leaf. I started with a watered down, it's a gamboge with a little bit of sap green. I always use the Dr. P.H. Martin watercolors. You can use whatever watercolor you want to achieve this look, and the same techniques that I use with the liquid watercolors you can apply to any type of watercolor that you use, which is really nice when it comes to watercolor. And I am going to be using the same brush throughout the entire video. And it is my Princeton round snap brush in a size 12. As you can see, it's a very loved brush. It's falling apart, but I still use it. I have a new one that I've just not broken into. I don't know what it is. It's like that comfortable sweater that you can't get rid of, but this is my beloved brush. And I'm using it for the entire thing, including details. It has a nice firmness to it, which is great for these techniques. So if you have a round brush, a larger round brush, because I'm doing this on a 9x12, that might be ideal for you. But I always encourage my students to try around with different brushes because different people have different feels for what works for them. So this may not be the right brush for you. I always tell my students, try different brushes. Some students always work with a big brush or go bigger brushes like I do. Some will use 20 to 30 different brushes throughout a whole painting. So whatever works, as long as you're comfortable and you get the results you want. So what I did is I started off with a watered down, that yellow tone, which is the base of the color. And then I started layering in the greens, a little bit darker green, and then I went with a really dark green, and I did not wait for it to dry. So that's the key here, is not waiting for it to dry. I want it to bleed into the watercolor that we have there already, so I didn't want it to dry. And I also didn't want it to be super wet on wet either, because then I can't really control that bloom. And I use bleed and bloom intermix, you know what I mean. Interchangeably, I use my my terms, but they're the same thing. And I'm leaving a little bit of a gap in the between, kind of where that leaf folds, where that thick vein goes through. And that's just because I want that to stay light. I'm gonna just do kind of a cool trick in the end. I'll show you here, but I'm gonna leave that gap there because I don't want that to get dark with the other color. So now I'm just adding in the shading and doing some lifting with the towel that I have. And I have heard people, they're like, liquid watercolors do not lift. As you can see, they definitely lift. They may not lift as well as the pan or the tubes, but they definitely lift. So I just lifted it. So I'm also now adding in some of these little streaks, like the little vines and stuff. I find that working quickly is what helps me, because I don't know what it is. When you do it quick, it kind of your hand gets into this pattern and it automatically controls it for you, so you don't have to try to get these perfect little lines. It's just that quickness that does it. And then again, it wasn't super dry, and it also was definitely not super wet. I wanted to have a little bit of a bleed, but not so much that you lose those lines. So now I'm just going on to the next section of the leaf. I'm working a section at a time so that you can see how this works. So this one, again, same technique as I did the leaf above it. I started off with that very light color, and when it's still wet, I'm adding in the green and I'm letting it bleed into the yellow, and I love the way it comes out because it's kind of doing the work for me. I don't have to overblend that or overbleed it because it's just doing it for me because that paint was still wet. It's kind of like a wet on wet effect without the paper being wet first. Technically the paper where that's touching is wet because the paint's wet, but I'm just not applying water first. So it's the same concept, it's just controlled a little bit differently, and it works the same way, but to me it's a little bit more controlled than doing wet on wet altogether. So now I'm doing the same thing, layering in the darker greens as I get to kind of where that leaf folds. So where the leaf folds inward, it's going to be a little bit darker. And you want to add darker greens. You don't want to go in with like a brown or, you know, a gray just to give it that depth or shadow, because then it gets a little bit ashy. And that just doing darker greens helps with that fold and giving it that depth and making it look really nice. So in my video next week, I'm actually going to be kind of staying in the same theme. I'm going to be doing some wildflowers and just doing some loose watercolors, which I know is different from what I normally do, and I had a request for those as well. So let me know if you're interested in anything else, botanicals, or of course anything in general that you might be interested in learning. I love catering to what people are looking for, and I think it just kind of helps with your growth. And it's, you know, sometimes when I just want to be like, hey, how do you do this? It's just, thank goodness for YouTube, right? So I'm just kind of going through and finishing up this leaf, same exact techniques, and I'm going to finish up kind of the base. I'm still going to go through and add quite a bit of layers to this, but as you can see, I'm taking my time with each leaf. I'm not just doing kind of a rush through with the colors, which tends to be more of the photorealism approach to things, which is what my focus is photorealism watercolors. So I always tend to just kind of bring that through everything I do. So it'll be interesting to see my loose watercolor next week, because it is very different from what I normally do. It's just, I don't know, maybe it's an A-type personality I have, or maybe it's just me being, I don't know. When you paint, do you tend to hyper-focus on one area, or do you finish the whole thing with one layer and then go through and add layers to the whole painting at once? Or are you more like me, where you do kind of one area at a time? I'm curious what your approach is. Do you have a reason for why you approach it that way? So now I'm adding in more dark shadows. So the dark shadows, like I said, it's just darker green. I do not want to get too dark either, which is why I like approaching this, you know, a layer at a time, which is really what we need to do in watercolor. A lot of people tend to go in too dark too quickly, and then you kind of can't come back from it, especially if you come from a world of acrylics or oil like I did. It was a very hard habit to break, and I've noticed now when I try to paint in acrylic, not oil, I don't paint in oil anymore. That's a whole dedication. I don't have oil paints at all, or the setup, but acrylic is a little bit easier to dabble in if I ever want to do it. And I find that when I do acrylic painting now, that it's just, I still hold on to some of my watercolor habits, which you can bring your watercolor habits into acrylic, but not so much the other way around. So it's just funny how that happens. It is like a language. I'm currently learning Spanish on Duolingo, and I know French, well, basic French. I'm not fluent in it. But because they're both Latin-based languages, I tend to accidentally switch between the two, and I think it's just my learning brain. But like, I started counting, started counting in Spanish and finished in French, and didn't even realize it until I was done. I was like, oh, where did that go wrong? So it's kind of like that when it comes to acrylics and watercolor for me, and it's just, you know, there's like two different languages, but I would say that acrylic and watercolor are different enough languages where they don't have the same base. So like Spanish and French, both are Latin-based languages, but acrylic and watercolor, I don't even put them in the same family. It'd be like learning Russian and learning French. Very different from each other, different letters, different everything, right? So that is how different watercolor is for me. So remember when I said I left that gap in the leaf and I was going to do a little quick trick on there. So that's just what I finished up that leaf with. So once it was dry, I just took a clean wet brush and I just glided that clean wet brush down the middle, and it pulled in enough green from the leaves just to give it that kind of light tone there. And that was it. And I did that, and you could do that first if you want, but you'd wait for it to dry. In this case, it was just easier for me to do it in the end. So now we're moving on to a different leaf, and this one has a little bit of a blue base to it. And some of these leaves, a lot of times, they do have a little bit of blue tone to it. And succulents tend to have a lot more blue tones to them than the tropical leaves. The tropical leaves tend to have a little bit more of that very vivid green yellows in it, not so much the blues, but this one actually had a little bit of a blue tint to it. And if you look at them side by side, you can kind of see where this is just slightly a different green, almost like that evergreen, like a foresty green, and those are that blue tones. So I just took the same green, the sap green, and just added a very, very tiny touch of Payne's Gray to it, which Payne's Gray is not gray, it's like a blue, which is funny when I'm doing my paint nights, because I do have a lot of regulars. I have probably about a group of 15 or 20 people who are my regulars that come. They have memberships, club memberships, so they come to all my sip and paints. So, and a lot of them have taken my workshops, and they've taken my more advanced classes, so they know the language, and they know my teaching method, and they're very comfortable with everything, and they know the paints, and they've gotten to know the brushes. So they'll come in and they'll say, oh, I want my Payne's Gray, which is a very big favorite amongst my students, and of course myself. And then I'll have that new person saying, how come I didn't get gray? And it's like, well, you did get gray, it's your blue. So, and your gray is your black. And so there's a couple of things that we have to tell people, like Payne's Gray is blue and gray is black, and so it's just funny. So now I'm doing this leaf, and as you can see, I left the light colors in there, and I did this just slightly different, where the base dried quite a bit more than I did with the other one. I wanted to be more deliberate with my streaks. Now with this part here, you can kind of see a little bit more where that blue is coming through than in the beginning, but they did all have that blue tone to it, and it's different enough that it's kind of separating itself from the other leaf, but it's still within the same family. I don't know if you can hear that in the background. I apologize if you can. That's my ice machine. I can't control it. I guess I could turn it off, but then I'd be very sad because I wouldn't have ice for my drink after I'm done with my video, which I always need a drink after this. Not that kind of drink. I just get thirsty. So, and then here I'm leaving quite a bit of that light color, a lot lighter than I did with the other leaf, just to give that really nice bright shadow and light contrast. And this leaf kind of has like the one leaf is kind of going underneath the other leaf, so that's why you have that really dark shadow there. And now I'm just pulling this line through to give that nice dark edge against that vein on the big leaf there. And then I'm just quickly, like I said, quickness helps with you here. Don't leave that line solid, because then you'll see it and it will annoy you. So as soon as you're done with this one line, you want to go through and do what I'm doing right now, which is adding the little lines for the veins. I think one of my things when I get a new studio, and I'm here for at least another year, it's in an older building, and I'm in New England, so chances are I'm going to be in an older building. It's just par for the course, right? You have buildings in New England are noisy. They make noise, and this isn't a building that's like 300 years old like a lot of them are, but it is an older building, and the buildings here are just noisy. So I would love to get an art studio in a building that isn't noisy. That's my goal, but probably not going to happen. So it's just something we're going to have to get used to, right, with these videos. Okay, so back to now I'm doing the left side. So this is something, if you've been around for a while and you've listened to my other videos, or you've even been to my classes, you know this is my habit that I am incapable apparently of breaking, is I start my paintings on the right side instead of the left side. And if you're right-handed, you want to start on the left side, because then you can paint left to right. But when you start on the right side, then you kind of have to wait for it to dry, or you end up with smudge marks on your fingers on your hand, and then you end up then you can smudge your painting and your paper. So you know, you would think by now I would have learned this lesson, but I absolutely have not learned my lesson, because I am now 6 years into my journey and still very much starting on the right side of the painting. And it's just every time I do it, I'm like, oh, why did I do that? I don't know what it is. It's just a habit I can't break. So in this case, don't do as I do, do as I say, and start on the left side. It's unless you're left-handed, then you start on the right side, right? So it's not a big deal. It's just kind of one of those little weird quirks that I have. And I'm just working my way down the leaf like I did with the other one. And the sun just came out. It's been a really gloomy week. And as I'm recording this, yesterday was Easter, and it pretty much rained all day. It's been raining for a week. It's been just kind of, spring is struggling to kick off. I keep looking at the trees and waiting to see those little tiny green buds pop up on the trees, and I have not seen them yet. I feel like I usually see them by this time of year, but we had a really, really brutal winter this year. We had, I think our average snowfall, I'm on the seacoast, so we get less snow than the rest of New Hampshire, but we usually get, I think our average snowfall is like 24, they said 20 to 24 inches is our average snowfall per year. I know that probably doesn't sound like a lot for New England, but like I said, we're on the seacoast, so that salt air kind of keeps that snow away. And this year we got close to 90 inches, so it was a crazy year. I loved it. I absolutely loved it, but everybody was kind of, by end of March I was over it. I think we have snow on our forecast this week, but it's not going to stick. It's been a very long, brutal winter. So I am, and the sun just went away. So as I was saying that, it's just, and this last week we've had a lot of rain. There's no snow left on the ground, and it's stuck for a very long time. But the rain finally got rid of it, and I'm just looking at my trees, and there's still no buds on them. I'm on the second floor in my art studio, and I look over this kind of course, a parking lot, but there's a bunch of maple trees out in the green area, really beautiful. And they already tapped the trees for the maple syrup here, which I think is so cool because I can watch that from my art studio. And still no buds on the trees. They got the maple syrup out of them though, so gotta get that. That's important. So hopefully soon. Okay, so I'm working on this leaf behind the one banana leaf. It's kind of hard to tell, but this is where you want to paint what you see, not what you know. So a lot of times people are like, oh, there's a leaf behind here, let's distinguish that. But if you can't visually distinguish that in a photo or real life, then don't do it in your painting either. And I left that little gap in between the two, again, like I did with my first leaf, so that I can just take a light wet brush at the end and kind of create that light color between. Now I'm doing another leaf that's behind this first leaf. There are so many noises happening right now. Just in my studio, of course, I have my ice machine and my air conditioning going right now. But one of my neighbors is doing something mechanical. I don't know what it is, but I apologize if you hear it. It's a Monday. It is a Monday, so, it's everybody's busy. So this is a really cool trick, was taking what I used was a daughter tool. You can use like the back of a brush, or even like a pen that it's not on, like the ink part's not out of the pen, like a clicker pen, but you don't have it. You can just do whatever you want that can create the groove. And I actually did it with a dotting tool, and I put the little lines, the veins inside the leaf, and it kind of forces these lines in there, and it's a little bit easier to use than a paintbrush. And then I just very lightly touched it with my towel to lift just enough color to distinguish those lines. Kind of a cool trick. Now this one I'm approaching as the same way as I did my first leaf, with using that light color and the dark color, but I'm going to take my towel and I am going to lift the color where it's bleeding, because I want to stop it right there. And now look at that. It's created this kind of like bend in the leaf just by doing that. It's kind of see a couple little tricks here and there just to try out. And it may not be something you want to do on your leaf right now. Maybe it's acting a different way, but it's just like a tool to keep in your back pocket in case you need it. And this one I am doing a little bit differently than my other leaves, where I'm putting in the dark first. And usually I start with the light, but I wanted to, like I said, I want to show you different techniques with each leaf. And this one I'm starting with the dark first, and then I'm going to add in the light, which you can do in watercolor. But you kind of have to do it in a way that is a little bit more controlled. So that's what I'm doing here, and I'm leaving the highlights behind, because once this dries, then I'm going to take my light color and go through really quick, and it's going to soften it up and create that kind of look with the leaf. So I'm now blending them all together, and I'm going to take my towel and I'm going to lift it all, and it's going to create this kind of cool effect. There it is. You didn't actually see me lift it up, but you saw the results of it right there. You might have to rewind that bit there. And now I'm just working through. Now, it's normal. I know in real life we're not supposed to have favorite children, and I don't, of course, but you can have favorite leaves if you're painting a plant. Don't have favorite children, but you can have favorite leaves if you're painting a plant. That's the rule of the day. And now I'm just moving on. And now that this other leaf dried, I'm adding in the dark veins. This one I actually really liked doing because it just, I don't know what it was. This was a fun, it just, sometimes you just get in these grooves with painting. This one is just, it was just relaxing to do. My brush is a little bit more on the wet side, and I want it to be more on the wet side because, as you can see, once I'm done with my single brush stroke, it leaves this dark pool of paint there, which I want. I'm going for that because I want it to create that natural shadow there, and it's just automatically doing it. And by doing it with a little bit of more of water and paint on my brush, it does that naturally. So just kind of a cool effect. So you just want your brush to end where you want that dark shadow to be. So because I want the right side of this leaf to be lighter, I'm starting on the right side of the leaf and then ending on the left. And you can see it leaves that dark pool. You can see it a little bit better on the lighter side of the leaf that I'm doing on. But it was just such a satisfying leaf to do. So if you're going to ask me which one's my favorite leaf, I think this one ended up being my favorite leaf just because I enjoyed painting it. And the one I did right before this was my least favorite. I just did not like the way it came out, but it worked, so I left it. And that's the thing. You're not going to always love every part of your painting. But the hard part is letting it go. Like, I may not love that leaf, but it works, and so I'm not going to overwork it. And that's where the overworking comes in. People are like, I just don't like it, and they get hyper fixated on it. When in reality, most people are not going to notice it. If it looks well enough, move on. If it's something that you know you can fix, and fix it, but it's very easy to get into the over fixing things here. And just working on some final details here as we get towards the end of the painting. Now I'm going to be using the white of the paper to leave these light marks. The white of the paper can definitely and should be used for highlights in paintings. One of the other things that you can use is a drawing gum, or you can use bleed-proof white. I think using the white of the paper is the prettiest way to do it, but it does take some practice and control. So if you are not quite there yet, totally fine. You can use the Pabeo drawing gum, which is what I like using, and I use a glass pen to apply it, or you can use bleed-proof white. So in order to use a drawing gum, you would need to know ahead of time that you're going to need it, because you have to apply that before you start your painting. But if in the end you're like, I kind of messed that up, bleed-proof white can definitely save the day. So it's a fun tool to use. So now I'm adding the stems. This was kind of like a thing I did at the end. I was like, oh yeah, I need to add my stems. I totally forgot to do that. Add my stems, add some final touches to these leaves. Some final pieces like the little tiny leaves coming out. And this one I'm just kind of doing a loose because it's in the background, but I still want to give it a little bit of love. And it's one of those leaves that's just starting to uncurl. It's a new baby leaf. And again, using the lifting of the paper towel to create the highlights there. And it's still wet, but I'm creating this same kind of line work that I did, but this time it's wet because I want it to be a little bit more blended than that first one I did. and because it's a baby leaf, so it's not so defined as my other leaves. And now I'm adding some darker shadows just to make that kind of pop. It's a new leaf, so it's got that really beautiful deep greens in there. It's a little baby leaf. And I just love this technique. I don't know what it is. It's so soothing to do. I could do this all day long. It's just one of those things. Sometimes, um, like animal fur, I get the same way with. I like just doing the animal fur, but sometimes with the just certain techniques that I just kind of love doing, and this is one of them. So let me know what you think. How are you doing with this one? If you are using pans or tubes, I would love to see how it comes out. I always like to see how it comes out with different watercolor mediums. And let me know if this helped you at all, of course. And if you have any special requests, then let me know, of course, as well. Now I'm just adding a little bit, just some shadows and some, like the leaf, like the little dark spots on the leaves and the branches, just to finish it up nicely. But that is pretty much it as I finish this up. So let me know what you think. Definitely take a look at the next video. There are some other florals and stuff as well, and hope you enjoy.